Hello, people. We're going to wait for some people to show up, and then we're going to begin talking about this sensitive topic. Once I see the people viewing pop up, I'll start covering what I feel like I should cover, and then I'll open it up to people's questions if anybody has questions about anything. Okay, so we are live now, and it shows that there's the potential for people to view. Just to recap, this weekend I did a Back the Blue rally, and I was kind of there as one of the security personnel. We had a bunch of people show up to the Back the Blue event, and about an hour into it, we had about 30 Antifa, a couple Black Lives Matter protesters that were just there to bang on pots and pans and make as much noise as possible. They kept coming over to the line, like trying to incite people to be like fearful and stuff like that. They were wanting people to start fighting with them. They were almost like antagonizing the situation, and it had the potential to get out of control, but I ended up pulling everybody away from the fence and stopping them from engaging with these people and just focusing on the rally that was at hand. What brings me to wanting to talk about Breonna Taylor is a lot of our patriots, veterans, ex-police and stuff like this from Illinois decided to head down to Louisville this weekend as extra protection for the public. The 3%ers were there. There's all kinds of people that kind of got in the mix of the NFAC rallying in Louisville. And if you don't know who the NFAC is, they call themselves the NFAC. It's the No Effing Around Coalition. And the Grand Master that kind of controls everything, they call him Grandmaster Jay. And he used to be some type of politician back in 2016 where they have recorded video footage of him saying all lives matter, not Black Lives Matter. But he says because of everything that's been going on the last 4 years, he's changed his mind, and that's not what he thinks anymore. And he's changed his whole tune on the whole entire situation. So now it's just justice, being armed, showing up in the streets with armed African-American individuals. They're the only people that can join his group, but he does allow other people to support his group. You just can't be part of it if you're not African-American. And they showed up in Louisville. There was a shooting that took place, and it was his own guys shooting his own people this weekend. So Grandmaster Jay's people were in some kind of group somewhere, and somebody had an accidental discharge, and I think 3 rounds went off. So they must have had something set on burst, and it shot 3 of their own individuals this weekend. When they went down there, they were saying that they were actually going down there to protest and rally for Breonna Taylor, justice for Breonna Taylor. But what actually ended up happening, actually, I take that back. There was much more than that. It seemed like there was more demands than that when they went down there. They were talking about weeks leading up to this. They were talking about getting their own land, reparations for the last 400 years of oppression, stuff like that. And then he kind of toned it down some as it got closer to the Louisville event and started talking more about just basically protesting justice for Breonna Taylor's death. Now, if some of you don't know the situation and what's been published, I'm just going to read just a basic article from the New York Times, and then I'll get into my thoughts on everything and the situation at hand. What happened in Louisville shortly after midnight on March 13th, Louisville police officers executing a search warrant used a battering ram to enter an apartment of Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old African-American emergency room technician. Ms. Taylor and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, had been in bed but got up when they heard a loud banging at the door. After a brief exchange, Mr. Walker fired his gun. The police also fired several shots. Mr. Walker told investigators that Ms. Taylor coughed and struggled to breathe for at least 5 minutes after she was shot. According to the Louisville Courier-Journal, she received no medical attention for more than 20 minutes after she was struck. The Courier-Journal reported, citing dispatch logs. The Jefferson County coroner told the Courier-Journal that Ms. Taylor most likely died less than a minute after she was shot. and could not have been saved. The police had been investigating two men who they believed were selling drugs out of a house that was far from Miss Taylor's home, but a judge had also signed a warrant allowing the police to search Miss Taylor's residence because the police said they believed that one of the two men had used her apartment to receive packages. The judge's order was a so-called no-knock warrant, which allowed the police to enter without warning or without identifying themselves as law enforcement. No drugs were found in the apartment. A lawyer for Mr. Walker said Miss Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, said her daughter had big dreams and planned a lifelong career in her health care after serving as an EMT. She had a whole plan on becoming a nurse, buying a house, and starting a family. Breonna had her head on straight, and she was a very decent person. She didn't deserve this. She wasn't the type of person. The Louisville police said that they only fired inside Miss Taylor's home after they were first fired upon by Kenneth Walker, Miss Taylor's boyfriend. They said that Mr. Walker wounded one of the officers who was hit in the leg, but was expected to make a full recovery. Mr. Walker was subsequently charged with attempted murder of a police officer, though the charge was dismissed in May. The police also assert that despite having a no-knock warrant, they knocked several times and identified themselves as police officers with a warrant before entering the apartment. Mr. Walker has said that he and Miss Taylor heard aggressive banging at the door and asked who it was, but they did not hear an announcement that it was the police. The police said the officers forced entry into the home and were immediately met with gunfire. The officers returned fire, the police said. One of the officers, Brett Hankinson, was fired. The other officers involved in the case, John Mattingly and Miles Cosgrove, had been placed on administrative reassignment. None of the officers faced criminal charges. The Kentucky Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, is now leading the investigation. The FBI is also investigating. So here's the thing. As a state, you break down your credibility when you give law enforcement the opportunity to do something without identifying themselves. A judge approved a no-knock warrant. And when you fire a police officer because they did what they were allowed to do based on being paid by the state, investigating a crime that was committed and they thought was an ongoing thing. Breonna Taylor had dealings with this person before. Breonna Taylor had packages that were delivered to her house from this guy. If you actually listen to the phone interview of Mr. Walker, her boyfriend, talking to the person interviewing him, he openly admits that he did fire his weapon first. He actually openly admits that Breonna was dealing with some, not very nice person in the past, just putting it in a nice way. So when you allow somebody to do something within legal rights of a state, and you say, this is what you're allowed to do, and a no-knock warrant means you don't have to identify yourself. You don't have to knock on a door. You can just go right in to try to find without people getting rid of stuff. Do I agree with a no-knock warrant? In a situation like this, when it just deals with petty stuff like drugs, no. I have issues with how we charge criminals based on drugs, and you can't even really call them criminals. If it's petty stuff, even if it's semi-large amounts of drugs, is that really a reason to go break into somebody's home and try to find whatever it is that you're looking for, knowing that they don't live there, knowing that the probability of you finding it is probably not very good? So that's where I have my issue in this. I can look at both sides and see where the issue lies. The problem that I have is you executed a search warrant based on legal ability. You still knocked on the door. People said they heard him knock, but they never heard them identify themselves. Well, you gave an opportunity to knock. They admitted they heard loud banging at the door. Now, if I hear loud banging at my door, that's not normal to me. I'm probably going to get up and get out of bed and respond to that anyway. That's not something that I'm just going to lay there and be all nonchalant about and just say it'll pass. I don't have very many friends that'll come to my door and bang on my door and know that I won't be pissed off about it. So I'm going to get up and try to figure out what's going on. Then they broke in the door and moved into the apartment. Now, via the phone recording, the interview with Mr. Walker, Breonna's boyfriend, they heard all this going on. They did get up out of bed. They did try to hurry up and put their clothes on. They did fire the first shot and hit the officer in the leg. Now, there's some stuff that you can look at that kind of they kind of makes you question here. There are a lot of states that say you have to give an intruder the opportunity to leave, safe passage out. And if you don't give an opportunity for them to leave, then you could actually be charged with a crime, even if it's in your own home. I know we all feel like if we have a weapon, it's our home, it's our dwelling, we have to let them leave. Now, I just got done with a CCL class, and that was one of the things that the officer really pushed to us was, if somebody breaks into your home and you have to protect your home, you need to give some kind of warning to make sure legally everything's okay. You can shoot if you want, but that's not going to keep you at a legal standpoint. Pick up the phone, dial 911, put the phone down, let it record what's going on. Hey, you're in my home, you better get out, I have a gun. I'm going to shoot you. Yeah, I have a gun, get out of my home. Make these commands known and recorded on this phone, so when you do shoot, you have recording that you've given notification, I have a gun, I'm going to shoot you, get out of my home. So certain states don't allow you to reserve the right to just shoot somebody because they come in your home. You don't know if they're high, they're not in their right mind, you don't know what's going on. So giving an opportunity out is sometimes the best way to do it. If you're behind a door, if you're protected with somebody, you have a weapon, give the warning. You're in my home, I'm going to shoot you, get out of my home. So these are the steps to take. Pick up that phone, dial 911, and just put it down. You don't even have to talk to anybody. They can hear what you're saying. It's going to record the message that's coming across. They're not going to hang up the phone. So no-knock warrants I don't necessarily agree with for stuff like this. Now, if you're harboring, fugitives because of whatever it may be, if you're harming children or something like that, I could see why a no-knock warrant could be a benefit, but that's a gray area right there. Executing a no-knock warrant is a very, very big gray area. People are going to try to protect themselves in situations like that, especially if they don't know who you are. So I can see why Mr. Walker did what he did, but at the same time, if they're executing a warrant in a situation where a judge approved it and they're following the guidelines the way it was supposed to be approved, the action is not against the officers that tried to defend themselves for doing what the state allowed them to do, for doing what the judicial system allowed them to do. It's not about firing the officer. It's not about putting them on administrative leave. It's not about anything that has to do with it. It's not about anything other than what happens higher up. And I keep preaching this time and time again, and people just don't get it. Your fight is not with me. Your fight is not with white people, purple people, yellow people, brown people, whatever color. Your fight is not with the police. Your fight is with the judicial system, the systems that give these people the power to do what they do. And I don't know how many times I have to preach this over and over again. Until you do something about the judicial system, until you start with the politicians and stuff like that, nothing is going to change. So people can point the finger all they want and say these officers need to be fired, they need to be in prison for the rest of their life. Well, first of all, you fired at the guy and you didn't give a warning. You literally just fired. Second of all, they didn't know who was in the direction they were firing up. So while they returned fire and Breonna Taylor died because of that, it was the gentleman's fault that didn't think about, when I pull this trigger and this person fires back at me, what is the collateral damage that could take place here? What is the collateral damage that could I harm myself? Could I harm my girlfriend? Could I actually potentially resort to inciting a life being taken when I pull the trigger of this gun? This is why owning a firearm is not a simple task of just owning a firearm and protecting yourself. There are multiple facets that come into play here. Just because you are a firearm owner does not mean that you have the right to pull the trigger in any situation. There are a number of things that have to go through your head. When you put your finger on that trigger and you're ready to pull it, you have to be ready to kill. You have to be ready to defend. And if you're trained enough and you're skilled enough, you can disable somebody in that instance. But if you're just the average Joe, the average mom or something like that, and you're protecting your home, when you put your finger on the trigger, you better be ready to put somebody down for good. If you're not trained and you don't know how to disable somebody properly by taking out a kneecap or disarming somebody by shooting them on the inside of their leg, hitting an artery, I know how to do those things. I'm trained to do that stuff. I can do that. But the average Joe cannot do that. They don't know how to do that. And when you're firing behind some kind of concealment and nobody knows where you are and there's another life back there with you, knowing damn well that there's several voices out in the other room and they're probably armed, and you choose to pull the trigger, you're asking for people to get hurt. So without identifying what's on the other side of that wall, without trying to get some kind of idea, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And now a life is lost that didn't have anything to do with pulling that gun out. So this is not so much just on the hands of the officers themselves. This is on the hands of Mr. Walker as well. When you freak out and you're not trained and there's several voices coming from another room, they're probably armed if they're not supposed to be in your home. You not only have to take your life into consideration, you have to take her life and theirs into consideration too. So while all this protesting and stuff is going on for justice of Breonna Taylor, how about we start looking at how people achieve firearms, how people have lack of training, and how the judicial system allows these people to conduct search and or no-knock warrants when it comes to petty stuff like drugs. I mean, people have been doing drugs from the beginning of time. People have been doing different types of drugs and resulting to using poisons as hallucinogens and stuff like that from the beginning of time. Now, I'm not condoning it, but I'm also saying that this is not abnormal, and we do have a huge drug problem in the United States. It's part of one of the main reasons why a lot of the gangbangers and the groups and stuff generate the revenue and stuff that they had that come in. This was just covered yesterday at the rally. Now, Breonna seemed to be a lovely person from everything that I read about her. And it's very unfortunate that she's not here. But to say that the officers need to be fired because they were operating within the law, because they were operating within the rights and the legislation that was given to them by somebody up much higher than them, that in itself seems to be criminal to me. To not look at the firearm owner, Mr. Walker, that pulled the trigger to begin with and say, wait a second, there were other lives here. So I understand you freaked out and that's human nature. But did you ever take a second to think, when I pull this trigger and its fire is returned upon me, what's going to happen to her? You know, I understand that I'm taking my life into perspective here at possibly losing it by defending myself. But what happens to the lady laying next to me? You know, you have to think about all those things. If I know that somebody else could potentially be killed or hurt because of an action that I take, I'm going to make sure that when I pull that trigger, that it's not a warning shot. It's a shot to critically take somebody down to where they cannot pick up a weapon or be able to move to get to something to hurt me after that. There won't be warning shots. If I know that in the vicinity of where I am, somebody else could potentially get harmed, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make sure that I got a good shot, hand steady on the gun, nice, good, solid aim behind some kind of cover. And when I take the shot, it's coming out and I'm shooting to disable. When other lives are in the area, you disable or you kill. Unfortunately, that's what it is. But when you're behind concealment and you don't know what's on the other side and you just aimlessly pull a warning shot and then you want to point the finger at the police and say it's all completely their fault, it's not completely their fault. You have to be a responsible gun owner. And the man in the interview, when he's doing his interview and it's recorded, he says, I've never pulled the trigger before on anything in public in my life. Anytime I've ever pulled a trigger, it's been in the range. So I was shocked having to do it in real life, and I get that. But this is not the police's fault here. They were given orders to do something, and they did it. They got legal authority to do it, and they did it. Breonna was dealing with people in the past that were not very good people, and she was taking packages at her home for these people. So a lot of people on the social media and the internet like to use the excuse that, oh, they went to the wrong home. No, they didn't go to the wrong home. They went to the home that they were supposed to go to. They went to the home that she had dealings with. They went to the home that they knew she was receiving packages of. It doesn't matter if the guy that they were after was 10 minutes down the road. They thought he could potentially be there, or there could be drugs there that are of his, or packages of his. So this talk on the internet, and one of the Black Lives Matter guys kind of was talking about her yesterday, and I presented him with that. And that was his initial argument was, wait a second, they went to the wrong home. They killed an innocent woman. Well, let's backtrack here a second. That is not what happened. Yes, they did kill an innocent woman, but it was only because they were fired upon by Mr. Walker, and he didn't know what was on the other side of that door or in that vicinity. He just fired, and it hit an officer, and the officers returned fire. You think I'm going to stand there and let you continue to fire at me and possibly kill me, especially if I'm conducting something within the law in my life? It didn't just happen that way. She had dealings with this guy previously, and they knew that she had potential. There was the potential for him to be there at her location, and there was the potential for there to be drugs there. They conducted things the way that the law allowed them to conduct things, and they conducted things the way everything was set out to be that night. It wasn't because they killed an innocent woman just because they wanted to kill an innocent woman. It was because they did what they had to do to get the job done that night. And the job was not to kill her. The job was to find this man or these drugs. So people on social media that like to retweet what Sean King says, but by the way, Sean King is a joke. Sean King is a white dude that acts like he wants to be the leader of the Black Lives Matter community. He puts out a lot of hostile stuff at times. He actually tries to, in some situations, incite violence. And he started a rumor that he said the police officer actually shot the other police officer. That is not what happened. They even have extremely liberal news pages that have fact-checked and debunked him, which is kind of shocking because you would think that they would say that he was right. But that's not what any of them said. They actually said they fact-checked it, and his story does not lead up to the result of what happened. Actually, Mr. Walker himself, in the phone interview with the investigator, reporter, clearly says, I did shoot first. He wounded the officer, and the officers returned fire. So Sean King, being the joke of some kind of idiot leader that he is nothing but inciting more and more violence and spreading lies. They've already debunked what he had to say, and it's just another way for him to create more separation and segregation of people. So to recap this video, the police showed up legally with a no-knock warrant. The neighbors said that they did hear banging, but they didn't hear names identified. Breonna Taylor and Mr. Walker both said they heard banging but did not hear names identified. They broke in the door with a battering ram. They got out of bed real quick. They put their clothes and stuff on. Mr. Walker shot in the direction that he heard the sound coming from, striking one of the officers. They immediately pulled him out of the way and returned fire. When they returned fire in that direction, it hit Breonna Taylor and she died. That's what happened. So exactly where's the breakdown of them being, or where's this misconstruing of them being at the wrong house because they were not at the wrong house? Why is Mr. Walker not being potentially identified or questioned as, when you use that firearm, did you not ever consider the fact that maybe her life would be in danger because of you using that firearm? They didn't just shoot a sleeping woman that was in her bed. They returned fire upon a guy that was firing at them, and she was in the crossfire of it, or she was the result of the return fire. And unfortunately, her life is not here right now, sadly. But the media is not going to tell the story the way it needs to be told. And the NFAC is not going to tell the story the way it needs to be told. And looking at the legal standpoint of being a responsible firearms owner is not going to be, it's not going to clearly and concisely tell people exactly how you should handle and control a firearm. and what the repercussions would be, unless you're actually at a concealed carry class or a defense home class from the people that you're fighting against. The police officers are typically the ones that run this, and they have a lot of critical information for you when you go show up at these classes. They give you a lot of really good information. They tell you how you can legally fire upon somebody and make them identify themselves. I have a weapon, you're in my home. I have a weapon, you're in my home. Get out. I'm going to fire. 911, call it, let them start recording. Give it a few seconds, maybe not even a few seconds. As soon as it connects, it's recording. I have a weapon, you're in my home. I have a weapon, you're in my home. I'm going to fire. I'm going to fire. You get that on recording, you're clear all day. Nobody could ever do anything. You're right. Somebody could get shot on a no-knock warrant. That's why I don't like them. I'm not trying to defend that. That's not where this is going, and I don't want this conversation to go that way. I'm not here to argue with people. I'm just here to talk to people. I don't like no-knock warrants. I don't think they're very beneficial unless it's an extreme situation. And on some simple drug stuff, there was no need for that. But also, you have to take into consideration the whole entire spectrum, the whole entire situation that's going on, all the lies that are being spread on social media. Sean King getting involved and saying, no, the officer shot the other officer. It wasn't him, when he clearly admitted that he did fire his weapon. So there's more to just Breonna Taylor dying here. Now we've got a NFAC coalition coming around saying that they demand justice. They showed up in Louisville. Their demand was, we want justice for what happened, and whoever does the investigations, based on the video I watched from Grandmaster Jay an hour ago, Grandmaster Jay himself said that they did say that they will recreate the crime scene and they will exactly try to figure out what happened. So they got their answer. They are looking into it. Do they like the time frame? No. They said they're going to be back in Louisville 4 weeks from now, back at the rally protesting again. So there's a lot of points that were covered here, and I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I'm pointing I kind of am. I'm pointing the finger at not the police. That's the one person I'm not pointing the finger at. I'm pointing the finger at the judicial system on allowing what happens to happen, and I'm pointing the finger at Mr. Walker for not considering the fact that Breonna Taylor was in that room with him and what would happen by not identifying who was there. The police did their job. They showed up, they conducted a no-knock warrant, they operated inside the law. A man got shot, they returned fire. That's it. If you want justice for Breonna Taylor, you don't take it up with the police. You don't demand that the guy gets fired. What you do is you go to the judicial system and you say, why are you allowing people to do these no-knock warrants, and now my daughter, my sister, my loved one, my friend, my idol, my bestie, whatever, is dead because of that. No-knock warrants should only be conducted in very probable or very high percentage findings and very serious findings, not due to some kind of drug stuff. You could have cased the place out. You could have sat in the vehicles. You could have watched people. You could have waited for them to leave. You could have got them then. And you could have watched to make sure nothing was being taken out of the apartment then. You could have got one. I heard you, Shadowhawk. He says, if I wake up out of sleep and my door kicked in, I'm not asking who it is. I'm shooting first and asking questions. I got you. And you're within your rights to do that in most situations. Legally, in a lot of situations, you probably won't get out of that. Just for the simple fact that if you don't give somebody the opportunity to leave, in a lot of states, you can be legally prosecuted. Now, regardless, outside of feelings, I feel the same way that you do. But outside of feelings, from a legal standpoint, you can be charged for that. I just went through all this. I just went through these classes. I've been through many refresher classes on all this. And if you don't like that, then the only way to take this up is to actually try to define or change what the laws that are put in place are. We all have the right to protect ourselves. But a lot of times we have to give the person a situation out. I have a weapon. I'm going to hurt you. Get out. And if you give them that, especially if it's recorded on 911, fire, kill them. But a lot of times if you don't give that warning for somebody to leave because you don't know what state of mind they're in, they could kill you if you don't, if you don't act. I agree. But I'm of sensible mind, and no matter what stressful situation I am, because of how trained I am, that if I have to do that, if I have to get out of bed, I'm warning somebody immediately. It's going to be the first thing that comes out of my mouth. They will get warned, and then I will shoot. I will not hesitate. But that's a, what would you call it? That's just a creature habit or whatever. That's something that I would do immediately. I've spending, the time that I spent in Iraq and stuff like that, I understand everybody doesn't have that training. You learn to warn. You don't just shoot. You learn to warn. Even if they're in your home, they're still in your TV, they're about to take your car, have it, take it. These are items that can be replaced. It's not worth shooting somebody over. Take it. Take the TV, take everything. I don't need it. I can replace that. That's why I have insurance. But taking a life because they're in your home, a lot of times will put you behind bars. And unfortunately, that it is what it is. We're not living in Kentucky. We're not living down in Alabama and Tennessee, Louisiana, places like this where it's more forgiving. A lot of us are up north. There's more politicians. There's a lot more corruption and stuff going on, and they don't look at guns like the rest of the world does. There's a lot of places in the world where they don't allow people to have guns to protect themselves. So learning how to be a responsible firearms owner, what you can and can't do, is a huge thing. In the state of Illinois, somebody breaks into your home, and you don't warn them that you're going to shoot them, and you just start shooting because they're in your home, chances are you're going to be behind bars for a little bit. The best thing to do, 911, done, recording, get out of my home, I have a gun, get out of my home, I have a gun. Okay, you're not getting out of my home, bam, 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 whatever you got to do, done. You're covered. It's not that hard to do it. It's pretty simple. But it's practicing that, getting out of that mindset that I'm just going to shoot, I'm just going to shoot, I'm just going to shoot. That's not how to operate. Unfortunately, we should have that freedom to do that because people shouldn't be so stupid to come into your home. That's not how to operate. Not today's legal standpoint. Now, I've said what I have to say. We're 32 minutes in, and I'm sure some of you are pretty pissed off. In the future, if you watch this video, or maybe watching this video now, if you have any questions that you'd like for me to put up across the screen, or if you have any statements that you would like for me to show everybody else, you can make that statement right now, and I'll put it on the screen for any future people that watch this video. They can see what you have to say. I agree with this statement. But again, as I've said before, that doesn't always get us out of trouble. The best thing for you to do as a firearms owner is to practice, learn the law, go to the refresher classes, get involved with advanced classes and stuff like that, and you become more of a person that's not so scared or agitated or rough around the edges when it comes to somebody taking your property. We're always in this mindset, this is mine, I've earned it, I own it, you can't take it from me. Well, when we get in that mindset, we want to protect, but oftentimes what we're saying is we're ready to hurt, and that's not the answer to it. I'm all for protection, but I'm also for being sensible about using a firearm. These police officers did their job. Outside of whatever we think the law that we have, unless you want to get rid of all laws, and the politicians, the judges, starting from the judges up above them, are what put these things in place. And they gave them the ability to do this. So it's not firing the officers. It's not coming after the police chief or the police department. It's going after the judge that approved this and above. That's where this needs to be. So a lot of this nonsensical stuff of social media blowing this up and saying, oh, they killed an innocent woman. They did kill an innocent woman, but she had dealings with somebody previously that was harboring and trafficking drugs. So when you deal with people like that, when you get in with crowds like that that are consistently in trouble, that are bringing the police around, and you're that type of person at that time, she seemed to be a lovely person. Like, her head really was on straight. But I know a lot of good people that have really good jobs, and they are of great sound mind that deal with some really bad people. And when you deal with those type of people, it also starts to become a direct reflection of the person that people see you as. So if you're dealing with people like that and you bring this kind of stuff to your life, this is what could happen. That's why growing up, your parents always say, I don't like that friend that you're dealing with. He's a troublemaker. He's going to get you in trouble. Or you have friends in your life that say, the reason why I don't hang around with you so much no more is because you've been hanging around with Mike, and Mike's been in and out of prison his whole life, and that's just something that I don't want to be around. It's not to say Mike's not a good person. That's just somebody's personal choice on trying to protect themselves and trying to be aware of the situation and trying to limit the chances of them having bad come to their life. Jenny, I covered that. You must have missed the first part of the video, and throughout the entire video where I keep referencing it. It's not that hard. Watch this. Slide up. 911. I mean, literally, if I didn't have to do all that other stuff to close out the programs that took 2 seconds to do. 911, send. Put the phone down. Grab your firearm. Hey, you're in my home. You're in my home. You're in my home. It's already recording you. You already have all the proof that you need right there. Immediate recording. Records everything. There's your proof. It's too easy. That's the best way to do it. And if you have a few seconds, if your home's big enough and they're not a potential danger immediately, hey, 911, somebody's in my home right now. I'm going to put the phone down, and if you can get somebody here as fast as possible, I'm going to get my weapon out so I can protect myself. Done. Put the phone down. Don't even have to say nothing to them. Don't even wait for them to say, hey, this and that, whatever. No. I said what I had to say. Put the phone down. It's recording. Get your weapon out. Protect yourself. There's a process here, and it stops you from a lot of legal action. Now, they let Mr. Walker go. They tried to get him on attempted murder, but they let him go because of the situation. Obviously, Breonna Taylor's life was lost. So there's a number of things that need to be worked on here, but it's not pointing the finger at the police officers and saying, fire them. They did their job. For instance, this weekend at the Black to Blue rally, right? So I'm there trying to help with the security aspect of it. There's a white guy that comes up to us at the end. He's got Antifa across the shirt. He's got a flag coming draped down upside down. It's got some writing and stuff on it. And he comes up and he says, why do you have all these police officers here? Don't you think that's fucking bullshit and everything else? And you'd have to get police officers to come in here and protect you? And I said, whoa, wait a second here. You think these police officers are here to protect us? You see how many people are out here with us? There's a mob of people out here right now. You don't think 25% or greater of these are not veterans, police, highly trained officers that are they're off duty but are still police officers that are out here right now? You can see some of them carrying weapons. You think the police are here for us? There's 30 of you, and there's hundreds and hundreds of us. The police are not here for us. If you came over here and started what you were trying to do on the side of the road by inciting violence and trying to get people to fight with you and stuff like that, you don't think that you guys would be dead? So you don't see the need for police, but yet you want to keep being jackasses and trying to incite violence and want to fight with people and stuff like that, and don't think that people are going to shoot your ass? The police are here not to protect us. The police are here to protect you. You defund the police and get rid of the police and everything else and let civilians take care of everything, there's going to be a lot of dead people. A lot. And that's not a threat on my half. That's just speaking in reality. There's going to be a lot of dead people. People aren't going to, just like the situation here where Mr. Walker had to defend his home. That's what he felt he had to do. Regardless of how he did it, that's what he felt he had to do. He grabbed a gun and pulled the trigger. There was no questioning what was going on. There was no warning or anything. He grabbed the gun and pulled the trigger. You don't think that would have happened at that rally yesterday? When those guys kept rushing the fence, trying to jump over it, spitting on veterans' boots, they had to push them back. You don't think those guys would have pulled out their guns and just shot them right there without the police there? You're damn right they would have. So it's not the police's fault for executing what they did within their job time, within what they had to do that night, and the authority that was given to them by a judge. And this is why I always talk about this. I was talking with one of the Black Lives Matter supporter, Antifa supporter and stuff, just a reporter yesterday. And he said, so what you're saying is that we should be focusing on judges and above. Absolutely. That's where it needs to start. It has nothing to do with the police departments and stuff. Yeah, there are some police departments in certain areas that are corrupt. There are some bad cops that don't represent the rest of the 99% good cops. But that's where it needs to start. When you start putting pressure on the judges and above, and all of a sudden stuff starts changing. It's not taking people's jobs away from them so they can't provide for their family anymore, providing safety for the community. If I feel like I have to protect myself and there's no law enforcement to do that, you're better off being protected by the law enforcement than you are me. Because I have more rights to shoot you than a police officer does. That's just a fact. And they're already hard enough to get past on a civilian doing it. What do you think it is for a police officer? They have a lot more, it's a lot tougher for them to do it without the investigations and everything else. Look at this thing. Mr. Walker was charged with attempted murder, and they dropped it immediately. A police officer would still be pending court trial and stuff, going through investigation and everything else if that was the case. And 9 times out of 10, considering the situation that we're dealing with today, would be in prison because of it. You don't want to defund the police. You don't want to get rid of the police. That's not the answer. Does anybody else have anything to say? I mean, I like what Karen said here. I really appreciate this comment. That's why we need to continue to train in having a firearm. The training never ends for having a firearm. Never. Every weekend, if I get a chance, if I'm not doing something with, my girlfriend, family, or something like that, I go to the range. Even if I'm so dog tired, I just can't do it. I go to the range and I put 100 rounds through my weapon. I practice on my sight picture. I practice on keeping my weapon clean. I'm reading firearm literature and stuff like that. I'm trying to stay engaged all the time on how to use this weapon. Even though I have all the training that I have, it never stops. If you are a firearm owner, you need to be very, very, very responsible with that thing. Get in there, take some refresher classes, take some advanced classes, see if there's any kind of special programs, that you can get involved with, where they teach you about the laws and stuff like that outside of a concealed carry class. It's important to be involved with that stuff if you're a firearm owner. Just owning a firearm in general and saying, okay, I'm good, I can protect myself, that's not the situation. That's not a great idea. Just like what's going on, Chris? So when we look at this entire situation here, it's unfortunate that Breonna is not here anymore. It's also unfortunate that the officers were given the ability to do this no-knock warrant, and it should have never been given in the first place. So my proposition is this. If you give an order for a no-knock warrant, it needs to be of serious, serious crime. It needs to be that somebody's life is in danger, children are getting abused. So it needs to be that you've committed federal crimes with maybe the importance on corruption or harming, many, many, many lives. But to say that you're going to conduct a no-knock warrant for drugs, you can catch people doing or transporting and harboring drugs in many ways. I worked for a company down south where I actually tracked fugitives that were wanted by the police. And it's too easy to stake people out. You could have sat outside there. You could have waited at their work. You could have done a number of things to figure out and nab these people and get them without trying to potentially put yourself and their life in danger.
but at the same time, learning how to be a responsible firearm owner, learning how to conduct yourself in a stressful situation while taking into account the other things that are in your life, like people's lives. So I can't point the finger here at the police and say, this is your fault for doing this. It's not. It is not their fault. It is the people that give them the power to do that, that okay them to do that. It is the people that are in charge of them that do that. Okay, then let's look at the police chief. You know, is this something that he wants to happen in his police station? Let's look at the head deputy that may call the shots and stuff out in the street when they're conducting searches and stuff like that. You know, maybe we can look there, but the police officers that are carrying out the orders, that are doing so within a legal standpoint, if you don't like that they have a no-knock warrant policy for petty stuff like this, then you need to get out there and be active and get this stuff pulled out of legislation. You need to get out there as a community and remove the ability to do this type of stuff for petty crimes. That's the only way that this is going to change. But saying that you're going to take somebody's job away because they did what they were supposed to do, and they didn't even fire the weapon first, and they operated within law, is ridiculous to me. It's ludicrous. I would be outside of the mayor's house. I would be outside of the governor's house. I would be outside of the judge's house, protesting there, saying this will change. This is going to change now. And we're going to be here every single time we get a chance until you change this. I would not demand police officers be fired. I would not demand that police officers go to prison for something like this. I would demand that they change the way the law is written and the way that they give the approvals for this stuff so this stuff doesn't happen anymore. You can fight all day killing off the little man, the police officers, taking them out of jobs, putting them in prison and everything else, but there's thousands more where they came from. Why are you going to grasp at pennies when you can go for the $100 bills? You're not doing that. You're picking up pennies when you need to be focusing on picking up bills, and that's not what you're doing. You're starting down low, and there's just too many of them to get anywhere. You go right for the mayor, right for the governor, right for the state's attorney, right for the judge that approves this stuff, and you get justice there. That's how it happens. You don't take people out of their jobs because they're operating within their legislation. And if you don't like the legislation, you change it. And that's the only way it's going to happen. I've been repeating myself, guys, and I kind of don't like hearing myself repeat myself. It's annoying. So, is there anything at all somebody would like for me to flash across the screen for other viewers to see? I'll put it up now. I give you about 30 seconds, and I'm going to close the stream. And I appreciate you guys. If there's anything else you'd like for me to cover, recap this, if you want me to cover some laws that possibly talk about this stuff, let me know. I'll cover that as well. But as of now, this live stream has been concluded. I hope you don't misconstrue what I've put here, and I'm sure there are people who are going to try to twist it and sway it whatever you want, whatever way they want. It's not cool. I see both sides. See you, Chris. Okay, guys, that's it. I've waited. I appreciate you. Again, if there's anything else you would want me to cover, you want me to get into some of the laws, you want me to get into some of the handgun stuff, what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, I'll do that as well. But if not, I love y'all. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. Thanks for being here. I'll see you guys later.